Okay, ICS3U, here's the Introduction to Python lesson. It's the first lesson in Python that I'm planning to do with you. And we're going to be using Visual Studio Code. If you're using Replit, that's fine. Or if you're using another Python, if you install Python and you haven't got a chance to install Visual Studio Code yet, you'll be able to go down here in Windows and search for an application called IDLE, I-D-L-E. And IDLE works very similar. I'll show you how to use IDLE. Visual Studio Code is a lot more beneficial, but if you're just starting, type in IDLE. There's IDLE. I don't think you can see what I'm doing right now, but I'm just going to go into it and tell you the steps to take to create a new window. So when you get into IDLE, it's just going to show a shell, just like a Python command line. But if you do want to try this out, go to IDLE, open it up. You're going to want to go to File and then New File. As soon as you go to File, then New File, it creates a new editor window, just like Notepad, and you'll be able to type in Python code here and run it. But I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code. So I have my Python. You've already watched the video on how to install Visual Studio Code at this point, and you have it installed and how to create your first program. So I'm going to create a new file now just by clicking here in Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to call it intro.py, and it's possible, I don't remember if that video already shows this, but just go through this quickly anyway and you might see some new things. So I wanted to show you variable. So a variable is a very important part of any programming language. A variable allows us to store a value in the computer's memory, and this is going to be a hallmark of programming and computer science. If we want to store a value like a number or a string, which is just a sequence of characters, or a password, or if we want to store anything at all, we'll be storing it in a variable in this course for now, or other things that come from variables. So here's my first. If you want to create a variable, you just give it a name. I'm going to say number. Number is going to be my variable name, and I'm going to set it equal to 4. So in math class, the equal sign means inequality, but this is a bit different. Think back to problem solving, even back to elementary school, where you did let x represent the number of apples in the basket. So in this case, it's kind of like that, where you're setting x equal to a value. You're solving for x in elementary school and high school as well. But here, we're just saying, well, number is a variable instead of x. We're just calling it number. So in computer programming, unlike math, so in math, your variable names can only be one letter long, right? With subscripts maybe. But in programming languages, you can have a full name. And you can even use underscores or dashes. There's other characters you can't use. Underscores are safe, and dashes are safe as well. So number is being set to 4. So whenever you see an equal sign, a single equal sign, and this isn't just in Python, this is in other languages as well, think of it as the set equals. Okay, I'm also going to have a variable called name, and number and name did not exist before we created them. And I'm going to say name is equal to, and then any name you want, I'm just going to put Bob in there. So now we can test that Python actually got these. We can say print, and then rounded bracket, and then number. So you've previously seen the print statement being used with quotes, but we're not using quotes here. We're just accessing a variable name. Okay, so I want you to think of the variable name as a label, and the value as whatever's being held inside of that location in the computer's memory. Think of it as a box. So the box has a label, maybe with a post-it note. The post-it note says number. Inside of there, it has the value of the variable 4. So when we run it, in our terminal, we will see that it says 4. So there's our output, 4. I can also print out the value of Bob. I can do print name. I'm not going to put Bob, I'm going to put name. And I want you to notice, like some of you might be trying to do, if you tried to do that, print Bob without any quotes, look what happens. This is important to see what the errors are as well. So you're seeing an error here. It says And let's read it, even though it looks kind of like it looks a little confusing. Don't let it intimidate you. Once you start reading error messages and get familiar with them, it'll be simple once you get some experience with it. First time's always the hardest. But let's see what it says at the bottom there. It says trace back, blah, blah, blah. It says name error. Name Bob is not defined. So it's saying, well, you don't have quotes around it. It must be a variable, but there is no variable called Bob. What we meant to do is we meant to put in name there. So if we run it now by putting a name without any quotes, it accesses the value of the variable name, and you can see it prints out 4 and then it prints out Bob. Okay, so that's our introductory thing. The other thing you can do, it's very useful, is you can add and subtract, multiply and divide. So let's say I did plus 3, number plus 3. So in that line, print number, I'm just putting plus 3 in there. As you can see, I just typed that out. I just edited it. So when we try to run it now, it won't print 4, which is what we define number to be. It'll print 4 plus 3. It'll print 7. So print 7 and then the name Bob. Okay, let's see something else that's interesting here. You can actually combine print statements onto the same line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase this last line. By the way I did that is I held down the Shift key and I just highlighted all the stuff, and then I just press backspace. I do little shortcuts like that and like to explain them when I do them. I'm going to put a comma at the end of this first print statement, and then I'm going to put name. So in this case, I'm combining the variable number plus 3 and then the variable name into the same thing. So when I run it, it'll show 7 and Bob all on the same line. Okay, I think that's good. We're about 7 minutes in. That's it for this program, and I'm going to have another short video coming up next. See you then.